Live stream preparing. Here we go. All right, we are live in the GHL Mastery Facebook group, and this is the first time in probably, I would say, a month and a half that we've been able to do one of these dedicated workshops for you guys. And I'm super, super stoked because this is a topic that has become even more relevant and even more important now that A2P verification is a thing. A2P verification wasn't a thing when we first started, and so you could just start texting willy-nilly whenever you wanted to. But if you want to get your clients kind of kicked off quickly, kicked off now, and kicked off the right way, email is going to need to be a key part of your strategy when it comes to at least starting out. The other component of this is if you're doing email marketing or any sort of email campaigns and email follow-up, and your emails are ending up in spam, that's not doing you or your clients any good at all. So today, you know, as we say this all the time, we like to stay in our lane. We like to talk about the things that we are experts at, which is by and large the Highlevel platform. But we get questions all the time about, hey, emails, email this, email that. Why is my email not getting into the inbox? And while we know enough to be dangerous, and thankfully the guy that I'm about to introduce has verified that we are in fact very dangerous when it comes to email setup, we did it the right way. But I wanted to bring in somebody who was an actual true email expert that can walk you guys through the ins and outs of email deliverability so that you know how to set it up correctly the first time and you know how to set up correctly every time so that your emails and your clients' emails end up landing in the inbox. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Matt Ratliff. Matt, thanks so much for verifying that we actually know what we're doing and can set up an email delivery system correctly, and B, sharing your knowledge with our community. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
And let's kind of, without further ado, let's dive right in. So Matt's going to kind of cover a lot of the high level, pun intended, topics about email deliverability, so that you guys kind of understand the ins and outs of setting things up properly. You know, how do you warm up your email campaign so that it ends up in the inbox? That's a question that I genuinely don't know the answer to. And so Matt's going to be here and share all of his knowledge with us today on email deliverability. So Matt, thanks again.
Take it away. All right. Hey guys, how's it going? So yeah, I'm the owner and founder of Funnel Techie, and I've got another service called Elite Email Academy. So that's primarily where I live. And so every day I do email deliverability for my clients. That's effectively what pays my bills. So you guys are agency owners. So there's before we kind of get into this, there's some things that I didn't specifically call out in these slides, but one very important thing that you guys are going to have to be aware of whenever, and I think Highlevel does a decent job of this when you're onboarding, but one thing that you need to make sure of is that under your agency settings, just because this is top of mind at the moment, go into agency view and go down to settings and then to company. There's something very critical that you must change, and it's the API domain. We don't want to leave this sucker blank, because if we do, we're going to be left to the standard MSG S&DR. And so some of you may be aware of it, but that's a domain that Highlevel owns. And so too often that becomes blacklisted. So you can imagine that if you got, a whole string of sub accounts within your agency, they're using trigger links, they're using, that sort of structure. If an inbox provider sees that MSG S&DR is behind the scenes, then it's negatively going to impact your or that person's deliverability. So effectively, that could be the single root cause of a lot of the problems. So we need to make sure that we use a domain that we own as an agency owner. So Maverick CRM is mine, and I'm using link.maverickcrm.io. That's my domain. And if you hover over this question mark, it tells you what to do. You just basically need to create a CNAME record and point it to that link.msgsndr.com domain.
Matt,
so that effectively,
I'm going to jump in here just real quick to make a very distinct clarification on what this actually is.
Yeah.
For those of you guys that don't know. So the API domain is the domain that is used across all sub accounts. So Matt currently is showing you agency view. So when you set up your API domain, anytime you send a trigger link, whether that's through a text message or through an email, it is going to use this link. So this link domain. So in this case, link.maverickcrm.io/ whatever. It doesn't matter if you're at RM Marketing or if you're at GHL Mastery sub account. That is the link that's going to be sent. Now, quick gotcha. Highlevel launched this last week and then relaunched it again today, that you can now create branded API domains inside sub accounts. So this is also going to be, a big thing where not only are you sending, you can send your default domain, which is going to send in all sub accounts. You can go into the sub account level and you can actually also set this up using your client's domain, which is going to make that deliverability even better.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wanted to point that out because that was just top of mind and not something I specifically called out in the slides here. But as we get deeper in this, so let's talk about what it takes to stay in the inbox. Well, first of all, to get there and stay there. So, foundationally speaking, we know that we've got to set up proper DNS. So whenever we go to LC email, Mailgun, SendGrid, it doesn't matter the SMTP provider that you're using. I like to refer to that as the email engine. It could be anything under the sun. Those entities are going to make you verify certain DNS records. And so we know that effectively in the very beginning, we're going to be taken care of from an SPF standpoint and a DKIM standpoint. Usually DMARC, so now with Yahoo and Google updates, if you guys have been following along with what they've done, February 1st, a lot of things came live with Google and Yahoo. So now they're definitely checking to make sure that you got DMARC in place. DMARC is something that typically these providers don't call out and tell you that you need to do. Maybe they'll do a better job with that going forward. But more importantly, they don't do it automatically. They don't say, add this specific record, because DMARC can be kind of dangerous, especially if you don't know what the use case is for it. We can kind of get in the weeds here in just a moment, but just know that with a DMARC record, all that there needs to be is a none policy to meet the requirements that Yahoo and Google have set out. So if you've got a DMARC policy set to none, that's all we need. And I think Adam's got some slides based upon DMARC, which we can talk about later. So proper DNS,
Quick
we
question
know.
for you, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I've heard going forward in 2025 that actually Google is looking at making that as reject as the minimum requirement and not just none or quarantine any further.
Well, I specifically haven't heard that. I'll be kind of surprised if they do move in that direction, although that would be good for everyone to do. Yeah. So I've got reject across my entire email foundation everywhere. And another caveat with DMARC is being extracted from your from display field. So when you go into an email inside of GHL and you're putting a from email address as whatever that is, that portion of the email, that domain that you include in that field, that's the domain that DMARC is going to be extracted from. So DMARC is going to be, it goes hand in hand with SPF and or DKIM. So one of those two records has to be there, and there must be a domain match with that and DMARC. I don't want to get too far in the weeds at the moment, but just know that that's kind of the way that DMARC works. And so if something's off, let's say that you don't have a proper SPF record, you don't have a proper DKIM, something's off. What DMARC does, it tells the inbox provider what to do with that email that they've received. Do you want them to reject it? Well, if they reject it, that means that it's simply just not going to go anywhere. It's going to go into the dev null basket, the black hole. If the policy is set to quarantine, then every time that email will go to spam if something's off with SPF DKIM. If those are in alignment, perfect, we're good. We can land in the inbox. If it's set to none, then we've set a structure to where, okay, now we could begin monitoring DMARC and seeing what would happen if we had a quarantine policy or a reject policy. There's some reporting aspects that DMARC allows you to add to it so that you can see certain things. But a DMARC policy set to none is that first stage of getting DMARC set to where it needs to be. So now we're going to go into a warm-up policy. Anytime that you introduce a brand new domain, it's the first of its kind. The world has not seen it. We don't want to hypothetically say that we've got a list of 10,000 contacts, and on day one, we want to blast to that entire list. What's going to happen is that the inbox provider is going to be like, hey, wait a second, dude. This is brand new. I don't know what's going on. We're now going to throttle you, or we're going to immediately defer you for a number of days. So it's going to wreak havoc on your domain. So that's why in a warm-up policy or a warm-up approach is very critical. And we'll get into the weeds of that in just a moment.
Hey Matt, real quick on that, because
Yep.
I've heard lots of different information about this on the internet. I've heard things like, if you're setting up a brand new domain, don't actually use your primary domain. Don't use subdomains of your primary domain. I've heard, yeah, you can use a subdomain of your primary domain. From what I understand about email deliverability, if my mailing domain that we set up and my send from email don't match, that's going to cause a problem. So can you talk a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah. So, so yeah, we can break it down. So let's use my brand. So funneltechie.com, right? So in my world, I do have different flows. So funneltechie.com has a business inbox, lives with Google G Suite or Google Workspace. So when I go in and create a funnel and you guys come in, make a purchase of something, then that next email that gets sent out is going to be sent from my transactional subdomain. So I've got a subdomain created that I think it's t.funneltechie.com. So the T just simply stands for transactional. And then anytime that I want to do a marketing blast, I've got m.funneltechie.com that's being used there. So I've got isolated flow. So I've got my transactional sends, I've got my business inbox, and I've got my marketing. The purpose of this, and I'll go into some other points in just a second. The purpose of that is to make sure that with my marketing efforts, if I were sending my marketing efforts from my root domain that lives in Google Workspace, let's say that some point down the road, all of a sudden I get a huge influx of spam complaints. I don't want that because that will negatively impact my domain's reputation. So by having it segmented into its own subdomain, now if something happens there, I wouldn't want it to happen, but it's going to be only isolated to that one subdomain. Now,
Perfect.
Can that actually bleed up to the root domain? Can it cause problems in that fashion? It would have to be super catastrophic for that to happen. Now, in the reverse, though, if you're doing something at the root level and you get all sorts of spam complaints, blacklisted, all of that, then that will have a trickle down effect on all of your subdomains. So just keep that in mind. Does that kind of answer your question, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. So to paraphrase and just simplify that for any newbies in here, you can and should create subdomains of your primary domain for email sending domains.
Yeah. And so the other thing is that, okay, so and I see this across the board and it's okay, but just be mindful of this. So you go in, you've got your custom domain that it belongs to only you. You go in there, you create a brand new subdomain in Mailgun or LC. And then you go to code your emails. So you want to go ahead and send out your first email. And you go to the from address line and you put in, matt@funneltechie.com, which in fact, it's going to flow through maybe m.funneltechie.com. So you got in the from display field, your root domain, and the SMTP field, it's m.funneltechie.com. Well, first of all, does that meet the requirement with Yahoo and Google? It does, because we're sharing the same root domain. So we get a check there. But whenever we go to send that, there are now two domains in that envelope in the header section that are now being evaluated. So anything that happens from a spam complaint level can bleed over to the root domain because they've both been called out in the email. So the point of this is to just mention that it's perfectly fine to say, to go to the from display line and say, matt@m.funneltechie.com to call out your subdomain in that field. That's perfectly fine. I've heard very well-known email deliverability people in the GHL space that have said on video, when do you ever see someone sending email from a subdomain? You see it all the time. So if you go to your emails now from another business, I'm a member of Ancestry, so I like to go back and look at my Ancestry records. That's a really good example. My wife gets a lot of emails from Target. They use subdomains. So it's all over the board, and they're doing that to protect different flows of email for their email foundation. So just know that. So it's perfectly fine.
Awesome. Let's carry on. Let's keep moving.
Yeah. So list cleanup or clean list. We want to make sure that we're we don't have any spam traps. We want to make sure that we don't have any stale addresses. We want to make sure that we don't have any addresses that could potentially bounce. So those of us that are starting from the ground up and building something thanks, baby, something brand new, then organically we're going to have a good list for the most part. And there's some other caveats to know about, but I'll get in that in just a moment. But where was I going with this? If you've got a current list and you're migrating from, let's say, something from ActiveCampaign over into GHL, then make sure though that if you've not properly cleaned that list, it might be advantageous to, use something like Zero Bounce or Never Bounce, or even Mailgun. So if you've got a Mailgun account, they all do a decent.
Actually, I'll write it on the doc, but yeah, I want to make sure that everybody knows where to go for
Yeah.
that.
Now the other thing is that those systems that I just mentioned are not perfect. Like none of them are. They're working off of different strategies. Like they're, using a history, like a database from, things from long ago that they've pulled in. There's other techniques that they can use to sort of discern whether an email address is good or not, or whether it's a spam trap or not. But ultimately, they're doing a best guess scenario. And about 70% of the time, they do a decent job, but not great. So just know that. But at least that could be a starter for that. List segmentation. We want to make sure that we're aligning the messaging to the correct avatar, to the correct audience. We don't want to jumble everything up and have a mixed bag, because if we do that, then we risk a lot of spam complaints or a lot of people unsubscribing. So it's going to be very critical for us to make sure that we're crafting the right message for the right audience. And that goes into segmentation, which within GHL, that's going to be based upon tags. Things of that sort. Quality content, that's obvious. We want to make sure that we're sending quality content, something that aligns. We want to make sure that we've got a proper unsubscribe option. Unsubscribe just means that we've got a line of demarcation, as I like to call it, at the very bottom of your email. That's naturally where everyone's eyes are going to go initially until they get used to the new UI structure in Gmail or whichever platform they're using. Yeah. So basically,
that's happened to me twice in the last couple of days, where I'm like, where the hell is the unsubscribe button for this email? It was at the top.
Yeah. So, like in my messaging, I do manually build my own unsubscribe. I've got one listed in the copy at the very top of my email. I don't normally see people doing that, but I've got it at the very top. I've got it at the bottom, but I call it line of demarcation because that's where everyone's eyes will typically go. Now, with the new Yahoo updates, if you guys have looked, and I'll try to be real quick with this. Let me go into another inbox. Let me go into Gmail, and then I'll switch over into an inbox that I've got here. Let's go there. And if you notice, this unsubscribe, so right here, so this is a part of the new UI changes that Google has pushed out. Now, these are a few months old. They started doing that, I don't know, around maybe November, December. So you may notice that. And then if we go into some of these, you'll notice that now there's a blue unsubscribe button at the top. Now, some of you that are sending email may not see any of those just yet. In fact, these will show, even though there may not be a proper list unsubscribe header inside of the email, which I'll show you in just a moment. This unsubscribe button can be published based upon your unsubscribe at the very bottom. So it's taking this information, pulling it up here, so that makes it easier for their user base to unsubscribe. So we need to make sure that it's perfectly safe. And I've heard this too many times. A lot of people have said, Matt, if I use the word unsubscribe, it's going to hurt deliverability. No, it's not. Trust me, I've seen tons of things. Make sure you use the word unsubscribe. So use that keyword. Make sure that you got it in the footer so that Google can at least start honoring that and push it up there. The other thing is that you may not immediately see it. The reason being is because we need to first make sure that we've got proper domain authentication for it to be honored. Second thing, Google must have seen a good amount of history with really good email engagement for that to be honored. So once those two criteria are met, then you should start seeing the unsubscribe button being listed for your emails going out. Any questions about that specifically?
No, let's keep on rolling. We'll do the questions in the VIP after party, but let's keep on rolling for the guys that are watching on Facebook.
And then a good domain reputation, a good IP reputation. So what this goes, well, this is perfect for understanding the email deliverability game. So let's say that your domain reputation is high. You've got excellent copy for, and you're perfectly aligning the copy to the actual right audience. But for whatever reason, the IP that you're using to send the email contains a bad reputation with the mailbox provider that the email is going to go to. It doesn't matter how good the copy is. It doesn't matter how good your domain reputation is. None of that matters. The IP is going to dictate whether that email lands in inbox or goes to spam. So there's a really good strategy. You can use Google Postmaster tools in order to get some really good information from their system to see whether or not the IP is a good IP versus not. So we can kind of get in that in just a moment. But that's kind of the overarching concept and high level overview of getting into the inbox and staying there. So we talked about SPF records. SPF just simply stands for Sender Policy Framework, and it basically tells the mailbox provider that this system, like SendGrid, Postmark, Mailgun, LC, that they have permission to send email on your domain's behalf. So that's why SPF is super critical to have. DKIM stands for Domain Keys Identified Mail, and it uses cryptography. It uses RSA key tokens. Basically, you've got a public record that everyone can see. I could show you my records now. That's not a problem. There's a public record that gets put in place for DNS. Whenever that email gets sent out and it's sent over to the mailbox provider, that mailbox provider is going to strip open that email. It's going to look at the envelope headers and say, oh, well, you've got DKIM. Let's make sure that nothing happened from the time that you press the send button to now us receiving it, to make sure that nothing happened in transmission. They're going to take a private key that we can't see and compare it to the public key to validate that the email is valid. Okay, so that's why this is more important than SPF. DMARC, basically, like I mentioned before, it tells the mailbox providers what to do with an email if one of these are off. Something is not right, something's missing. So basically, it's going to be a policy set to none, policy set to quarantine, or a policy set to reject. Reject ultimately needs to be what we all go to, but like I said before, it's very dangerous. So just you've got to make sure that you understand what could potentially happen if you do a reject policy. So now let's talk about warm up. So whenever what time is it? We still good on time, Adam?
Yep, 23. So yeah, we got about 40 minutes left.
Okay, cool. So warm up. So whenever we go in and create a brand new subdomain in whatever system for email, the world has not seen it yet. So we want to be very critical and very methodical with introducing that domain to the world. So like I mentioned a moment ago, we don't want to take our current list of 10,000 contacts and immediately blast them, because that's going to cause all sorts of problems. Now on the flip side, if every one of those 10,000 contacts are super engaged with you already and they know who you are and they all open the message, then great. But that typically doesn't happen. So we want to be very critical or very methodical with this approach. So the way I like to do it, I like to teach people that we need to create 3 to 5 different emails in an email series. It's going to be the initial warm-up series. And we're going to take those emails, and I like putting them inside of the templates area inside of GHL. So if you go under marketing, go under emails, you'll see the templates area there. That's where I like to build those initial templates first for the emails. And then under settings, you can sort of code the from address line, the from name, this preview header, things like that, subject line. So once you've got all those created, go into your workflows under automations, create a workflow with no trigger, and you're going to build the actions following this sort of practice. So the first email is going to be, the first email that needs to go out has an action. The next action, we're going to wait 24, 48 hours. I tend to do 48, but kind of depends on what we're doing. So either one of those two would be ideal. Third action, another email, so on and so forth, until we've exhausted all of the emails that we want to include in this campaign. So this is going to be very, very critical for us to know. But that's going to at least allow us to warm up the domain. So that's one key component. Once we kind of get the domain warmed up, then we can start increasing that flow going forward. To start, how do we do this? So we've gone in and created the workflow. what we can do, we can go into our audience, and let's say that we've got no history. We just got a list of 10,000 contacts. If we were migrating from a system like ActiveCampaign, and we could identify our most engaged folks prior and tag them as such, then inside of GHL, we can, locate those contacts and drip them into this workflow using a bulk action, and maybe do 100 per day. We use this scheme, so 100 per day until we start seeing really good metrics. And then as long as we've got good metrics going forward, meaning that our bounces are well under 2%, our spam complaints are well under 0.3%. That's Google and Yahoo's threshold, but we don't want to continue to meet a 0.3 threshold. We ideally want to stay under it. So the golden threshold is really 0.1%. So as long as we stay right there, then we're good. So you're watching bounces, you're watching spam complaints, watch your unsubscribes. So if we've enabled the unsubscribe tracking feature with Mailgun, then they're now watching it. So they've got an acceptable use policy that says, well, if your unsubscribes meet, I think it's a 1.0 or a 1.4 threshold, then they have they've got your permission or their permission to actually shut down that domain. So we want to make sure that we stay well underneath that threshold. So we want to watch our unsubscribe rate as well.
Hey, Matt, we're getting a lot of questions about, hey, where do I see that information inside Highlevel?
Where do you see that information? Yeah, so that's kind of a mixed bag. What you could do is if you're using LC or Mailgun, first of all, if you're using LC email, you can go under settings for the sub account, go under settings, go under email services, and then there is a analytics button. I believe I'm doing all of this off of memory. There should be an analytics option.
I'm gonna steal your screen share and show everybody here.
I don't have LC email, so you may want to share yours.
Yeah, we'll cover.
Let's see if Highlevel is going to load it here. There we go.
Yeah, so this is where
in the sub account settings, email services, and then email analytics. So that's one place. That's one place that you can go to find your overall deliverability. But for the use case that Matt's talking about, where you're going to slowly drip out, a 5-sequence set of emails to your list, where you can find, excuse me, where you can find that is you can actually go into the workflow, and I'll revert to Matt on this, but you can view stats. And you can kind of see your open rate, your click rate, all of that information in here as well.
Yeah. And now what Adam is showing you guys here is per email. What I'm looking for is kind of an overall picture to kind of understand holistically what's happening, because even though we want to see per email statistics, that's going to be super important. But I want to know the holistic stats. So on a 30-day representation, what does that look like? And then from there, we can get a sense of what we need to adjust. So that's what I like to look at.
Perfect.
And so this right here is going to give you that view.
Email services, email analytics is where you go to see all that.
Yeah. And you can change that date at the top right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Matt, you're going to have to reshare here because I stole it from you.
That is fun. So as long as our numbers look good from a statistical standpoint, we could begin to increase that flow every single day. Now, if you guys
I've
are
got
saying
a really quick one for you here, because this is actually something that I came across personally early on. My client, I asked them we were doing a review campaign for a client. They had about 2,500 contacts. This was before A2P regulations, and I still had email structures set up in my reputation management campaign.
Okay.
I asked them specifically, like, is this a good list? And they're like, I don't know. So how would you recommend us as agency owners go about, cleaning a list that we know nothing about? Like, where it's a list provided from a client from their CRM. How would you recommend going through that list to make sure that you're sending to the right people?
Yeah, that's going to be tough, because and even from the client standpoint, it kind of sounds like it could be a completely cold audience. One thing to mention about a cold audience, doing that inside of Highlevel, it's doable. If you align the messaging to the correct avatar, even though it's cold, there's a lot of things that is going to be very difficult, but I've seen people, successfully pull it off, but it's very rare. If you're truly wanting to do true cold email, Highlevel is not really going to be the best system for that, just because there's a game to be played and there's multiple domains that need to be introduced to make that happen. You need to send at a very low pace. So folks that are, working with clients that want to send or get through a list of 250,000 emails and they're all cold as soon as possible, well, guess what, pal? It's going to take forever if we do it with a single sub account inside of GHL. Because very soon that domain reputation is going to tank. And that's just the nature of the beast. So a system like Instantly would be ideal for that. But to answer your question more specifically, Adam, it's going to be tough. It's one of those things where, we try to come up with a series of emails that sort of align with our best guess with the audience, run them very slowly through that email workflow and watch those stats. And very quickly you'll get to see, well, something's off. They don't know who we are. This messaging is not aligning with them. It's too generic, things of that sort. But that's very tough though. But you've got to, start someplace to see exactly what kind of information, what kind of data you can get back.
Awesome. All right, let's keep moving.
Real quick though, about the warm-up strategy, the way that you guys can do this, I'll go into mine real quick. Didn't mean to go there. Let's go into, let's go into this one. I don't remember if there's any context in this one or not, but I'll give you an example. So I'm going to go in and say, I'm going to create a brand new workflow. And I'm going to create just one email. Actually, I'm going to create a wait action. So I don't want this to go anywhere. All right. And then I'm going to create, I'm going to just publish it. Did that not work? I think our heads are in the way, guys. Hold on.
Oh, the single monitor issues with Zoom.
Yeah, it's tough. All right. So now I can save and publish it. All right. So let's pretend this is our warm-up sequence that we've got. Now we remember we have no trigger. So how do we do it? Well, the way I like to do it is that I like to go into my contacts, and let's just create one right here because I don't have any contacts. So we go in and we actually select all of our contacts, the ones that we want to push into this.
Just got to wait for Highlevel to not be high-level-y, and then we'll be good to go.
Yeah. So we go here and we can say, so we've selected our contacts. We go up to what I call the robot head. We're going to push it into that workflow. So we identify it here. And we want to say add in drip mode. We don't want to do it all at once. We don't want to schedule it necessarily. We certainly want to do it in a drip mode. And then from here, we can kind of give it a name. It's going to be warm up. We could say, well, let's start tomorrow at whatever time, batch quantity. So on day one, we can say 100 per day. We don't want to send Saturday and Sunday unless you want to. Start from, this is just something I like to do. I like to say, well, let's start from maybe 9 a.m. to about 3:30 p.m. That's just a time that I like. And we can say add to campaign. Now, the cool thing about this is that as we are getting information back, we see that our email metrics are trending in the right direction. We can now say, okay, well, how do we go in and adjust that? Because we've already started it in a drip series. Well, we can go back to contacts. We can go under bulk actions. And we can come over here. It's queued, but I don't know if it'll let me edit. So we can say edit. And we can actually change the quantity until we've reached the end of the list. So we can keep coming back to the same list and begin increasing it day over day and start doubling it. So that's kind of the method. But just keep a close eye on those.
You want to know something crazy, Matt?
What's that?
You just taught me something about Highlevel. I had no idea that you could edit bulk actions. That is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's
so basically the use case there is you can add a list of 10,000 people Start your drip mode at 100 a day,
Yeah,
and then slowly ramp that up day over day according to that little flow chart that we just saw.
exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's great. So I'm
It's
going to
very
cancel
rare
that
that
because
Adam and I get taught something. So nice work.
awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right, so let me move that. Let me move that down actually.
Just getting our
Okay.
faces out of the way again. There we go.
Yeah, clean list. So I've already spoken about this. We want to use the bulk action inside or bulk verification through Mailgun LC, never bounce, zero bounce, things of that sort. Now, this is going to be a key thing to mention. Keep the list clean going forward. Now, how do we do that? How do we know? And by clean, I mean not only from staying away from an invalid standpoint. We've already identified most of our hard bounced addresses. We've identified that we don't really have any spam traps, but a key term though with spam traps. So how does that happen? Well, over time, like with Gmail, for example, this past December, they mentioned that they're going to go ahead and disable any inboxes that have not been accessed in over 2 years. So if you've not touched a Gmail inbox that you own in over 2 years, then at that point, they would have sucked that back and it's back in their arsenal. Now, could that have been turned into a spam trap? Likely so. So it could be that you've got someone on your list that all of a sudden stops looking at their inbox for whatever reason. Years pass, it's still on your list that's been converted to a spam trap. And now, if you send an email, it lands and hits that spam trap. It's going to be detrimental to your domain's reputation. So what we can do to sort of combat this is to put in sort of an email engagement system. This right here is something that Highlevel does not natively have built in. They're sort of going in that right direction. So if you've been watching Sean, he's been touting this lead scoring system, and now there's a V2 option out there. Well, it's not where it needs to be, and it's not doing exactly what I'm doing. So I took a system, I built a very linear set of workflows. It literally took me months to scale out and get perfect. It lives in the background and allows you to, well, it lives in the background, and with any email that you ever send, it's watching it. It's watching for opens, it's watching for clicks, it's watching for replies. And what this is going to do with you, for you is that it's going to allow you to, first of all, pinpoint people that are engaging with you. And more importantly, it's going to allow you to create a sunset policy. And let's say that you want a sunset policy set to 30 days. So let's say that you've been sending at least 3 emails a week to your list. That's ideal for a sunset policy of 30 days. If there are a set of contacts that don't engage with you by day 31, what this email engagement system will do, it's going to identify you, it's going to tag you and put you into a certain segment, and then it's going to mark your email or their email has do not disturb, so that you don't accidentally, reintroduce them into another series. First of all, what that's doing is that if you don't do that, your domain deliverability, the credits that you're getting, the opens and everything are going to slowly diminish. So we want to keep that high so the mailbox providers see that you are a good sender. So this is one way to, first of all, prevent spam traps. Second of all, keep your domain reputation high. And it all does it automatically. There's no manual actions on your part that you have to do. Watch for anything. It just does it automatically. It's beautiful. So let's say, though, that they've hit day 31. That's your sunset policy. They hit day 31. They have been maybe on a very long, extended 2-month vacation in Europe. Now they're returning home, and now they got to go through all their emails. What's going to happen then? They start opening your messages. Well, guess what? The system is watching for that too, all automatically. They open up a message from you. It triggers an open event. Open event's going to come in. It's going to say, hey, welcome back, dude. They're going to take off that segment that we used to segment them out. It's going to disable the D&D status and put them back into the rotation. So that's a very key distinction. The other thing is with this is that anytime, let's say that maybe someone has unsubscribed, because those of you that might be thinking a little bit ahead here, you're thinking, well, what if someone unsubscribes, Matt, and they come back in and open a previous email that they like? Maybe one that you sent 2 days ago, and they really like the value that you provided, but they've still unsubscribed. Well, what's going to happen? Well, the email engagement system will still see that they've opened the message. They will see that they've clicked it. But if they've unsubscribed, they won't let them back in. They're going to still be marked as D&D. They're still going to be marked as whatever segment for your sub account. So just know that. So this system is beautiful and works wonders. And to make this point clear, I'm going to take you into a client account of mine. I'm going to take you into, I'll come back to this workflow in just a second, but let me show you what this is. This is Inbox IQ. This is a product that I've created to sort of give folks a better way of kind of viewing their email stats holistically. So this is a client of mine. They're sending 362,000 messages over the past 30 days. And this is their open rate. I started working with this client back in July of last year. So this is their standard opens. This is their unique opens. And they're at this volume. So that's huge.
Massive.
And so,
I can only aspire to have a list that big.
Right. Yeah. And so a part of the reason why that's been so successful is because of this email engagement system. And I'll just allow you guys to put eyes on it. So again, it's something that I've created. It took me months to build out. It's my baby. And this is a very linear set of workflows. Now, it'll populate some data here in just a moment. It takes a little bit. So this is all of the data that the workflow system has put in place. And part of the strategy is that we can pinpoint folks that have opened and or clicked an email within maybe the last 14 days. And so we could actually use that as a part of our method for, well, maybe at the very beginning of the day, we want to take one of our new campaigns and send it to people that are super hot, right? People that are just super engaged with this. Take that email, send it to that audience. This system allows you to identify those folks. So now that email has been sent out, and every email that you send has a particular hash inside that email. So now the mailbox provider knows that this specific email has a very certain hash tied to it. And it sees that everyone is opening, they're engaging with it. So now you could say, well, the rest of the day, maybe after 1 p.m., let's send out another, let's send the same email out to another set of folks on our list. Maybe that's a 30 or 60-day list. And then we can send it. And the chances of that email landing in the inbox shoot up super high, and our engagement will be through the roof. And that's part of the strategy in staying in the inbox. And that's what this system gives you access to, helps frame that.
Hey, Matt, could you real quickly drill into the since last click 14 days, just so that I could show people the trigger here, because that's going to be a key thing
to go
for
into
everybody
it
to understand how to send or set something like this up if they wanted to. Now, keep in mind, our methodology, guys, at GHL Mastery is like, we'll show you. You can do it yourself. But like Matt said, he spent months making this system work the way that it should. So you can go ahead and try this. But just know that Matt's probably done it better. So we'll make sure that, Matt, if you've got the system, available to people, that we'll get your links out there as well. But yeah, if you could click on this trigger just to show people kind of how you can start this type of a workflow.
Yeah, so I'm looking for a click event that has changed within the contact profile. And then from there, if it detects it, then we're kind of go through these different checks that I've got outlined. We're removing any of the other tags that might have been associated, because now we want to effectively add the 14-day click tag. So now that's a segment of the audience that we could identify. Now, before we get here, there's day since last click is a part of this workflow, but there's another piece that goes into this that sort of has the parent structure. So if these guys weren't a part of the system, then this day since last click would not work at all. So there's some other pieces that tie into it. But once we reach the bottom of this tag has been added, then they're effectively moved over to the next workflow, and we're waiting for some more data to be passed through. So that's kind of how I've built these workflow systems. But like I said, there's some other information that goes into this to make it work.
Matt, and is there a specific trigger that you use to track whether somebody opened or whether somebody clicked? It's a rhetorical question for me, but I know other people are going to have it.
Well, and to differentiate between an open versus a clicks, because some people are thinking, well, I clicked to open it, so is that a click event? So
whenever you're working with an email service provider, you can turn open tracking on and click tracking on. And so effectively what's happening, if you've got open tracking turned on, whenever that email is sent through the email service provider, they're going to take a little pixel and they're going to add, a JPEG image that we can't see, computers can. And so whenever that email is received on the recipient side, that recipient opens the message. Yes, they've clicked the email to open it. That's different from a click because the click is actually going to happen within the email. So they open the message. That's going to render that pixel. So back to the system that's watching it. So now we know, okay, so there's an open transaction that's happened. So we get a check. So we're watching for that event. And then maybe within that call to action, there's a link to be clicked. So now we click that link, that also is being watched. So once that's clicked, then we know that that's a click event, and that also is being processed by the email service provider, and Highlevel can see that. And it doesn't matter if you're using Mailgun. You don't have to do anything different between Mailgun, Postmark, SendGrid, any of the other, Socket Labs, any of those other really cool SMTP providers. Those standard open clicks and replies will all be honored by Highlevel. So just know that you don't have to be using LC email. You don't have to be using Mailgun. Those are standard RFC standards, and they come back in, and we see that.
So yeah, just so people know, if you want to try to set something like this up yourself, there is a workflow trigger called email events. Okay, and inside email events, you can drill down into the event type, and the event types are going to give you bounced with Mailgun only. So that's only if you're using Mailgun. You've got clicked, complained, spam, opened, and unsubscribed. Okay, so those are default actions that you have inside Highlevel that you can set this up with to track open rates, click rates, and all of that sort of stuff. All right, let's keep rolling on. We got about 13 more minutes before we break out into the after party with the VIP crew.
Okay. And I know that I've touched on this too. So list segmentation. So ideally, if we are sending the wrong messaging to the wrong segment of your audience, then, that's going to cause some confusion, frustration. People are not going to open, people are going to mark you as spam, things of that sort. So that's going to be super critical for everyone to do. Has a way of controlling spam complaints. Align your messaging helps keep, so it's going to help keep deliverability high as well. So I know that we've touched on that. Let's keep going. Quality content. Before I talk about these items, one thing to point out is that whenever you're creating an email series or just an email in general, don't get so hung up with the number of links in your copy. It does not matter how many links are in there. It truly does not matter. What matters is the quality of those links. So if maybe you're linking out to a different domain other than your own, make sure that that domain is reputable. Make sure it's not janky in some sort of way. Make sure it's not involved in some sort of spam tactics. Just make sure it's got a good reputation. And as long as that holds true, then that's going to be a positive. So just know that. So it doesn't matter the quantity, the quality is what matters. So how do we keep engagement up? Well, we can use some sort of personalization. Make sure that we use the recipient's name, maybe their location, maybe some interests that they like, something that they're interested in. So if we can personalize the emails tailored to that specific person, then all the better. Relevance is going to be super important. Align the message to what they care most about. Maybe there's a way for us to extract it based upon talks that we've had with the people. Now, in my world, I do email deliverability, so I know what everyone is interested in, right? So it's very easy for me to do this. But in your case, maybe they've come in and they've bought a particular product. Make sure that you're recording what products they've bought so that you know how to tailor your message for a particular segment. Story-based emails, it's going to be really good for us to create some sort of emotion behind that. And it's good to sort of mix these types of emails, not all in one, but we could create, different types of emails to sort of follow this approach. And then, of course, value-based emails, give them something that they can use now. Really good use case of that is that I wrote a blog article for the Yahoo and Google update. I put that inside of an email, like verbatim. There was not really a call to action. I just provided a ton of value in that email. And you wouldn't believe it. I got hundreds of messages back saying, this is the best email I have ever received because the value that I gave them. And that's something that's really going to help boost email deliverability as well, if you're getting replies on those emails. Or maybe possibly for a value-based email, maybe give them a discount or a coupon, something like that. Those are just some things to kind of think about. Unsubscribe. Well, so this also goes hand in hand with the new Yahoo and Google updates. They do want you to have what's called a one-click unsubscribe. Now, this is different from what I'm talking about in this line, but what I'm talking about from the Google and Yahoo standards are that they are looking for a specific header in the emails that allows folks to do that unsubscribe option. So if I go back here, this right here is a one-click option. This right here is a one-click option. That's all baked in the header. So if you click it, you're unsubscribed, you're done. So that's what I'm talking about from the Yahoo and Google updates. That's going to be enabled if let's take Mailgun, for example. If you go into Mailgun, you go into domain settings, under tracking, there's going to be a tracking area for unsubscribes. If you turn that on, then that will give you the header information that Yahoo and Google are looking for. So, but that is only a requirement if you're a high volume sender. So if you're sending emails, let's say if it's 5,000 or more a day, then that's a requirement that you must have put in place. Now, if you're under that threshold, let's say that you're sending 3,000 emails a day, you don't necessarily have to include it. Would it help you and give you a little bit more of a boost with deliverability? Perhaps. But Google and Yahoo are saying 5,000 for a very specific reason, because when you hit that and they detect it, then they're going to use their algorithm, their systems to do a lot more checks to help control spam. And that's why they call out 5,000 or more a day, which equals about 150,000 per month. So just know that. The other thing is that, like I mentioned before, I still want to put an unsubscribe option in my line of demarcation. So if I go into an email, let me see if I've got one in here. So this right here is what I call my line of demarcation. And this is all custom built inside my GHL account. I've got some code that gives you these specific lines. And so this no problem click here in this unsubscribe. This is something that I need to fix, but right here is that unsubscribe link that you can include. And that's what I'm referring to here. If we go back to the slide, the second line is talking about a one clicker. And this is really useful for any B2B client. So if you're sending email to B&B type businesses, B2B uses an entirely different ecosystem for email for detecting spam. So a lot of these businesses sit behind what's called Barracuda. Barracuda is a gateway or a gatekeeper for their emails. So you send an email to a B&B, a business, and that email goes through their Barracuda system. Barracuda is literally going to click on every link, including the unsubscribe link in your emails. So if you build a one clicker inside of your line of demarcation, then for that type of email to that type of business, then they will probably go ahead and be unsubscribed before they even read it because of their system, because of the Barracuda system. So what you could do instead is make sure that when that link is clicked in the footer, that it goes to a form, and that form could automatically have pre-populated their email address. And so all that they now need to do is click the submit button and it's done. I don't really have a really good use case for that or a good example of that at the moment, but maybe we can come back to it.
So for anybody in the VIP group, you guys have seen us do this so many times I can't even count, but using that ref URL structure with a trigger link inside your email, your unsubscribe, send them to a funnel that you've built inside of Highlevel that auto populates their email on a form and they can just click unsubscribe. That's kind of what Matt's talking about here.
Exactly.
I have a really quick question because this is actually, again, something that genuinely I don't know. I've never done it. What I just mentioned about sending them to a funnel with a, either a form or just a one-click D&D unsubscribe. That's the method that we've always used ourselves. So we just have a trigger link that sends them to an unsubscribe page. Highlevel has the default unsubscribe option in business settings. What does that do? Where does that go? Because that is something that I haven't been able to figure out myself.
So meaning that you've enabled it, and when you click it,
When you
they
click on
have,
business settings, there's a enable unsubscribe on all outbound emails.
yeah. So I've not tested their form. So hopefully that goes to a form that you can submit. So I'm hoping that they're doing the exact same approach that we've just spoke about. I don't know for a fact because I know that
answer that actually because it's Mailgun. Inside Mailgun, if you've ever used Mailgun itself, each domain that you set up, you can go and there's an unsubscribe section in there. Then you click on that and it will auto populate and put a unsubscribe at the bottom. So what they did
yeah,
was
if you got the
grab that
tracking
link.
enabled.
Yeah, and so they grabbed that link and put it into the Highlevel LC tracking system as a check mark that you could do inside.
So effectively, they're
Summit.
leveraging that since LC is
Yeah.
email. They're just leveraging that tracking feature, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. But you would still recommend, the method that you just talked about and the method that we just talked about, where you create your own unsubscribe page and send your traffic to that page to unsubscribe.
That's what I like because I've got better control. And then at that point, if there's other things that you want people to see on your unsubscribe, so, they've gone ahead and clicked unsubscribe, they go to the confirmation page. Maybe you want to give them a parting gift. Well, let that parting gift be on that page. And that could be a quick way to win them back in some respect, right? So that could be a really good, useful strategy.
That's exactly what we did with our estimator tools, subscriptions,
good.
and stuff like that too.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a solid strategy.
But what about this? Do you want this thing? And if not, go ahead and unsubscribe.
I've seen people try to do the strategy, that exact approach, but with sending them another email after they've unsubscribed, that we don't need to do that. That's bad. So just put that on the actual page. Don't do it within another email after they've unsubscribed.
Yeah, 100%. You have been successfully unsubscribed. But did you also know that we have this ClickFunnels? If for those of you guys who have ever had ClickFunnels accounts, ClickFunnels is like Russell Brunson is the master of making you not unsubscribe or not cancel, because anytime you try to unsubscribe or cancel, they hit you with a 3-step funnel to actually unsubscribe. It's amazing, but it drives me crazy. All right, carry on, Matt. We're coming to the end here of this.
Yeah, this is the last slide anyway, so perfect timing. So how do we know what's happening under the hood? Not only from our email engagement system, we kind of see our stats within the dashboard inside of Highlevel, but how do we view the way Google sees us, right? So the majority of us are going to be sending emails to a set of Gmail addresses for the most part. Well, what we could do, we could take advantage of what's called GPT or Google Postmaster tools. I need to give you guys the link. So we go to https://postmaster.google.com. I'm going to pull that up now and show you what this looks like. It's going to allow us to sort of peer into a few things. And I'm going to use a client of mine.
Do you still have our domain on there?
Oh,
why don't you show ours, seeing as that's what we're doing?
GHL Mastery.
There you
Join.
go.
Yep.
This guy. Let's go into it. So the way this works, guys, is that once we're here, we can click the plus sign. We enter in our domain. Let's put in ClickFunnels real quick. Click next. I don't have anything to do with ClickFunnels, but if I were the owner or if I had access, then this is a way for Google to prove that you are that you're an admin, right? So we want to make sure that we add this as a text record inside of our DNS provider. Once we've added it, it could take some time, up to about 10 minutes roughly, typically, to propagate. Come back here, click verify, and then we can see the verify check right here. And now we can go into it to view some stats. Now, what we want to do is once we're here, we always want to look at the most history that we can put our eyes on. So changed from last 7 to last 120. And we've got all of these different categories. The top 3 that we want to look at is the spam rate, the IP reputation, and the domain reputation. So from a spam rate perspective, this is awesome, right? So flatlining at 0, that's ideally what we want. If we have some spikes, it's going to cause a whole lot of problems. Rule of thumb, remember, so Google is looking for, their threshold is 0.3%. Well, this is 0.7. Is that bad? Well, it would be if this trend continued, right? We can have huge fluctuations.
So if that was you, by the way, and you're watching this video, screw you, respectfully.
Right. Yeah. So, and this is okay, but we want to keep a watchful eye. Sometimes we'll see these large spikes, and that could cause some, deliverability issues with and change our domain reputation. But let's keep going. So we want to keep an eye on that. Let's go straight to domain reputation. I'll go back to IP in just a second. So let's check his IP reputation or his domain reputation. So this is where we want to live, right? So we want to stay at high. If we dip to medium, and even if we stayed at medium, that's still okay. But if we get to low, then we're going to significantly notice some deliverability problems. And certainly if we're at bad, if we've especially flatlined at bad, then all of our messages will go to spam, like no matter what. So we want to keep an eye on all of this. Now let's go back to IP reputation. So the reason I wanted to bring this up last is because out of the gate, IP reputation, if that has a bad reputation according to the mailbox provider that you've sent the email to, if they've seen that IP has, in the past has sent a lot of spammy type messages, and let's say that maybe it was low and bad, then guess what? No matter if your domain reputation is high, no matter how good of an audience you've aligned your messaging to, no matter how good the copy is, that message, if this IP is low or bad, especially bad, it will go to spam every single time. So it's going to be critical for us to watch this. And with LC email, I'll just make a quick plug about what I like and what I don't like. LC email is being, monitored and looked after by GHL, which in a lot of cases is cool. Makes it easy for onboarding. For us that are going to, start deep diving into email deliverability, I would maybe urge you to maybe, especially with the high volume senders, I would urge you to look at getting your own Mailgun account, because at that point, you can get your own dedicated IP, which only you are using. No one else is sharing the IP, and allows you to have a lot more control. So in this case with Adams, the IP that he's using under LC is this guy. By Google standards, it's at a medium status and has been for quite a while. His emails are coming into the inbox, no problem. So I'm not at all worried about this. So just kind of keep an eye on it.
I just want to make a quick distinction and clarification on a couple of things. When you guys use LC email, you are using by default a shared IP. So that is the, in Matt and My's conversation about our domain structure, that is the one thing that you don't have any control over when it comes to your email sending. Now, Highlevel recently added the option for you to get a dedicated IP at the agency level, which would mean that all of your sub accounts underneath you are also going to be using that dedicated IP. It's a little bit cheaper than the second option, which is you can go get a dedicated IP address on a per sub account level as well. The other cool thing is that you can resell those features through Highlevel as well to get a dedicated IP. Now, the risk of getting a dedicated IP at the agency level, no matter what, it's going to be a shared IP across whomever is using LC email with Highlevel. If you get your own dedicated IP at the agency level and you have one or two bad apple clients, that could impact your own dedicated sending IP across the board. Whereas if you get dedicated IPs for each one of your clients, their email practices will impact their dedicated IP at the end of the day. Now, obviously, as an agency, you should be helping them along with best practices when it comes to email and deliverability, but that's kind of how the IP structure works. So this IP being medium, it actually has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with the fact that that is just the IP that we got on by using the LC email system.
Yeah.
So it's the one thing that's out of our control, but still a very good thing to monitor.
Which is pretty much everybody here has about that, because I'm sure you don't have a dedicated IP.
Yeah. And the other real quick thing to mention, that if you go in the route of getting a dedicated IP for anything related to email, you must be at a volume of around at least 100,000 emails per month. I don't like to see anything underneath that. Could you get something around, 65,000, 70,000? Sure, but it's going to be better if you're around 100,000 emails a month. So if you're doing that for an agency, just make sure that everyone that is going to be a part of that same IP, your volume needs to be quite high, so that effectively the mailbox providers that are seeing the IP has a chance to retain some information. If they don't see enough volume of email, then you're basically resetting the score. So they're not going to keep score, right? So they're not going to retain any information. So they don't know that you're a good sender. So they're going to, as they start seeing a lot of really good email, and the volume of email is pretty significant, then now they've got a good history of, oh, this person sending email on this IP is good. So they're going to let you in. They're going to give you some extra credit for that. So just know that.
Awesome. Matt, did you have anything else in Postmaster that you feel is really, really important, or can we shut down the live portion and get into the private VIP session where
I
our
think that's
awesome
it. I
VIP
think,
members can really slam you with some questions here? There's
yeah,
going to be a
looking
lot.
forward to it. That's fine. Yeah, I think those top three are the ones to really be mindful of. There's some other things to go into, but I don't think it's useful for this today.
Awesome. Okay, well, if you are watching this live on Facebook and you're actually still watching this live on Facebook, thanks for tuning in. I hope that you found all of this information helpful. Now, Matt is going to have, I'm going to get Matt some links from Matt. If you guys want to connect with Matt and get some dedicated help with your email, we actually ourselves hired Matt to do exactly what, he mostly just showed us there. And it was amazing. It was amazing to know that, hey, you know what, despite the fact that we are not email experts, we actually didn't screw it up really all that bad. And in fact, we did the right thing. So just from a peace of mind perspective for yourself to know that, hey, I've done this the right way, or I've made a mistake somewhere and here's how I need to correct it. As an agency owner, it is really on you to make sure that your clients' emails are getting in the inbox. Otherwise, what are you doing? So Matt, I'm going to make sure that I grab your links so that people can book some time with you. If they really want to dive deep into this, we did it. I certainly do not regret it. Everything came back positive, and now I know, right? Now I know that, hey, we did it the right way. So I'm going to grab your links from you. I will post them in the Facebook group.
Cool.
And with that said, Matt, thanks so much for your time. We are
welcome.
going to shut down the live stream and we are going to get into the VIP party. Thanks everybody for watching.